Hi, this is Josh. You're going to want to listen to this one. We speak with Andrew from a rural school district in Louisiana about the day all technology died. They lost tech for 2 weeks due to the Ryuk ransomware virus. This is a story of their infection and how they recover. Have a listen. Hi, welcome to this episode of K12 Tech Talk with Chris and Josh and apparently permanent guest Corey. This week is a little bit of a special episode. Over the weekend, I came across a Reddit AMA that was posted by one of the individuals in the IT department at a school district in Louisiana that was recently hit by a ransomware attack. Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure. My name's Andrew O. I'll just say that. I'm a career technician. I'm 36 years old. I've done this IT stuff my whole life. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I now live in a small suburb type city with only about 10,000 people called Eunice, Louisiana. School district is St. Landry Parish. I don't mind saying that because it's all over the news. Opelousas is our central office. It's a little bit south of Lafayette, or actually north of Lafayette. It's a pretty big city. Lafayette's a big city. And I've been a road tech at this. My wife is a teacher in the same district, and I've been a road technician for the past 3 years. Even though prior to this job, I've been a sys and network admin for a private business in Baton Rouge.
Okay. So one of the things that struck me real quick about your district was you guys have approximately 19,000 users and 6 IT staff. Is that right?
Yeah. Actually, that number is off because one of the things I've been doing is inventorying users, and that user count was actually there's duplicates in that. So we're more like 16,000. But yeah, 16,000 and still 6 staff members. One is a secretary / sys person. That's all she does. The other is called a network admin. That's his title for whatever reason, but he has no network admin roles. He pretty much is the sys admin.
Oh, okay.
He does no Cisco stuff. He does all the VMs. He's kind of learning as he goes. He was a technician beforehand, and the guy that left his place, they asked him to take over. He took over, kind of sat in a chair, got 2 days of training, and then he just took off. So he's called a network admin, but he's actually just a sysadmin. And then you have 2 road techs, myself, another guy, and then we have one guy at the shop who basically just any kind of hardware related stuff. That's what he does there. And then we have a supervisor who is my boss, and he is basically the real network admin because he's the one that does any kind of Cisco stuff. He'll take me with him, and we'll replace Cisco switches and configure Cisco stuff. So he's a supervisor / director / network admin. And then we have one guy that just does literally nothing but lunch or nutrition cafeteria computers. That's it.
That's hilarious that you can dedicate one person to that. And realistically, the conversation around how you're able to support 16,000 users with 6 staff members is a whole other episode that we could get into and probably spend an hour talking about. But the real reason why we have you on and you've agreed to come on here is to talk about the event that took place recently where you guys were held hostage or held via ransomware. So I think you doing your AMA helped spread awareness to other people of how it went down, how you had to recover, stuff like that. And hopefully we can do the same thing with this episode and this podcast. So take me back. When did it happen and how did it first present itself on your network and in your environment?
I'm gonna back up to the attack. Actually, we noticed. I don't know the exact day that Windows 7 support was cut off, but I believe it was the 14th of January.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
I might be wrong on that exact date, but it was. I know exactly when this happened because I was preaching as a road tech. Because even though I have all this experience, they still don't let me make any kind of decisions. But I've been saying since before the Christmas break, I've been saying we got to get those Windows 7s off of this network. We have to get them off. my boss has been kind of nonchalant about it. He said, "Oh, you know what Windows is going to do? Microsoft, they're just going to extend support. That's what they're going to do."
Oh man.
Yeah, and so during the we get 2 weeks off for Christmas. I was doing more research on it, and I just found out by researching that they had already extended support 5 years. So what happened was basically, and I'm gonna back up a little bit before then. About a year ago, we had an emotet spread across one of our schools, just one.
Okay.
And I fought it for about 20 to 25 days just by myself. I went every day to that school and I tried to scan. I tried to do virus scans. I knew it was emotet. I looked it up how to fight it. I tried doing scans. I tried imaging computers it was on, just wiping them out. And anyway, I ended up having to image the whole school. That was about a year ago. So at that time, I knew something was going to happen, or it was coming.
Right.
And then at the beginning of the school year, around August, Lafayette Parish, which is a big city in Louisiana, they started noticing problems and they shut down their entire network the first week of school. They shut down everything to fortify it. And they basically were turning off ports and all this stuff. And it was a big news story around here, like, okay. And so we have a task force in Louisiana that the governor enacted. It was the first one of its kind in the country, where he has Department of Homeland Security, Louisiana State Police, the 2 National Guard units, and a brand new Office of Technology Services, which is a 5-year brand new division of the state of Louisiana. And they're all in this task force, right? So what happened when we get to this point where, okay, something happened in Lafayette, so this task force kind of fires up, and they send out a white paper basically in August saying, here's 6 steps that all school districts need to do.
Right.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I think I remember seeing that because the state of Louisiana issued a state of emergency. Isn't that right?
Well, they enacted when this type of, okay, so just to give y'all a sense of what's going on in this state, for some reason, when we did get hit, when we finally figured out we were hit, and the task force kind of came in and we had a meeting that morning, the next morning, we were told we were the 8th government agency since July that was hit in this state. So yeah, it's been in the news. It's kind of like, okay, so this task force the governor has enacted allows for a state of emergency, just like a hurricane or something that would come through a natural disaster. And the state of emergency allows for funding to come from, I don't know, state or federal level. So it's like almost like a natural disaster. So yeah, when this stuff happens and there's a hit, they put a state of emergency out, and then funding kicks in from somewhere. I'm not really sure where. So that has happened now. We're the 8th time this has happened.
Wow.
And so what happens is, and I'll back up what I was earlier, when I noticed emotet about a year ago, and then Lafayette had their crisis where they basically got together this task force and sent everybody a white paper. They were like, basically, here's 6 steps y'all need to do. First of all, the first step was turn off the entire internet. Just turn everything off, no network connection between your schools, and then fix the other stuff while you have that. So here we are in August, right when school's about to start. And we're told, teachers are coming in, getting the rooms together and everything, and we're told to shut everything down. So you can imagine how that went.
Yeah, right.
And my wife's a teacher, so she started freaking out. So it's like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So we shut everything down. We went through all their stuff. Basically their white paper was, close off all ports, do an ACL, block all traffic, and then slowly bring everything up. Don't have any domain, don't have any local admins. They wanted us to put laps in. It was stuff like that, like all the stuff you should do just to prevent this stuff from happening.
Sure.
And we shut everything down. We have a contractor, because our team's so small. We have a third-party contractor that helps the guy, our sysadmin, do stuff that's he's just overwhelmed or doesn't have enough time to get to on itself. So we called them in. We went through their list. They did everything, except they didn't do the local admin part. He left teachers. He has an all teachers group in AD, an Active Directory, and left them as local admins because he was worried about printers and all the tickets that were going to come through. That was the only thing on the list that we didn't do.
So you rolled out Laps, and you got Laps working?
Laps is still not in place as of this podcast. That's one of the last things I'm going to do. So I'll get to that later. But I haven't. I'm gonna be the one rolling that out, and I haven't. I have to put distribution points from System Center out and get all those out first.
Yeah.
And so I can get my software pushing in place before I start because laps is like the last thing you want to do, and that was part of the Guards, National Guard's plan. We have a whole whiteboard in our office where steps are there. It's still written down I might even take a picture and send it to you of what we're actually doing and what steps have been completed. Laps is at the very bottom of that because once you turn on laps, it kind of locks down everything else. You can't. Yeah. You're pretty much locking your whole system into place at that point. So
yeah. So take us to the day that the poop hit the fan.
All right. So here's we got back from the Christmas holidays, and I had a guy with me. My guy that's actually in the shop most of the time. He came on the road with me because I needed his help because we have 48 locations. We just took over what they call Head Start down here, which is the pre-K, before pre-K. Yeah. So in the summer, we took over 11 of those and absorbed that, which is funny in itself because they were paying somebody before we took over, a $50,000 contract to just take care of their IT. And then so once we took over, because there was federal money involved, we just absorbed that. So we already had 38 locations of 37, and we absorbed 11 more, like with our staff, just like that, just a blink of an eye. So I had this guy coming with me, and then so once I realized that Microsoft wasn't going to, which I knew this all along, but Microsoft wasn't going to extend support, we basically got back January, whatever day we got back, I don't even know, maybe 6th or 7th from the Christmas break. And I told my boss in the morning, we have a morning meeting every morning. And I said, look, man, Microsoft's not extending support for Windows 7. It's going to cut off. We have to go out there and image these computers. So what I did is I printed out a list through SCCM collection that gave me computer names and where they were. But we still had to hit every school. So we made it basically, I printed out a list of schools, and we have like regions where I have 8 schools here in this region. We're a big parish. When you say parish, it's just county. For whatever reason, Louisiana Purchase, we're called parishes instead of counties, right?
Right.
So we're a big parish, like 500 and something square miles. It's huge. Like from one side to the other, you can spend a whole hour just driving. Jeez. So yeah, it's very rural. We have 2 city type areas. Our quote cities are 20,000 people and 10,000 people, and that's it. The rest are just real rural towns and stuff like that. But there's a lot of schools. We have about 6 high schools. So anyway, we like I said, we got back from break. We went around just imaging computers for a week and a half, trying to beat that deadline, because I kept saying, like, this is gonna come back to bite us. Like Windows 7 with SMB1 and just Windows 7 in general not being patched for security patches, I was just scared. I knew something was going to happen. I was talking about it for a week, like the whole time. I was just like, I know this is going to happen. I know it's going to happen. Especially after fighting Emo Ted, I just knew. And one of the things we were doing, we were going on image and everything. We had about like 150 to 160 left that were Windows 7. And we went to the next school one morning. It was the day after. So we hit the day where Windows 7 cut off support. And the next day, 8:30 in the morning, we went to our next high school. And when we went to that high school, I got there, and it was me and my guy, and they're like, "Oh, y'all are here. Y'all are perfect timing." And I'm like, "What are y'all talking about?" And they're like, everything's down. And they were supposed to be testing that morning with some kind of interim test or some kind of, something online testing.
Right.
And they had people like kids waiting in the library to take tests. And they're like, "Oh, you're here to see about this." And we're like, "No, we're here to get rid of Windows 7. So that we have no network connection. So nothing was up. The phones were down. We just had switched to IP phones recently. Phones were down. Everything was down. No network connection to the internet. No DRC, nothing. It was all gone. And all I did was I walked to the server room. We at this point, which is all changed now, but at this point in time, we had a server at each school that was basically my system center distribution point.
Yeah.
For Pixie imaging, and also it was just a DHCP server and a file server.
Sure.
So I walked in. It's a basic Windows. It's an HP. It's nothing. It's not no rack server. It was just a basic PC that's kind of beefed up. Has a RAID array in it, 3 terabytes. Solid state hard drive for the OS, and it was just kind of like 16 or whatever gigs of RAM. I went over to it and I logged in just to see, because I was going to check DHCP and see if it was full, whatever. I logged into it. The minute I logged in, I got a thing pop up immediately saying the recycling bin was corrupt, which I've never seen that before in my whole life. I was like, okay, this is weird. And it said, "Do you want to empty it?" I was like, "Sure, why not?" Hit yes. And then And the second one came up, same thing, saying the second recycling bin, which I didn't even know existed on the D drive, the data drive, was also corrupt. You want to delete that? I was like, this is not normal. So I hit yes. I was like, I'm going to reboot the server. It's the first thing you do, right? Reboot, golden rule kind of. I rebooted. It came up slowly, but it came up. First thing I see is a white screen come up after a login. White screen on the screen, and just literally the word Ryuk in like about 12-point font with bold, RYUK. And then it had some guy's email at the top of the top left hand. And then it had a stupid saying at the bottom left that said, balance of shadow universe. That's all it had on the screen. So you had just a white screen, Ryuk, balance of shadow universe, and the guy's email was a Proton mail, which is an encrypted mail. At that point, yeah, go ahead.
So this was just one of your 49 schools, right? So right. How quickly did that jump from that school to your other 48 schools, or did it?
Okay, so here's what happened was, so once I noticed that, I looked over, I don't know what the cursing policy is here, so I looked at my guy and I said, we're effed, we're done. I knew Ryuk. I've already read about Ryuk, Emotet, and what's the other one? There's like three of them that work together.
Yeah.
TrickBot. So all these three kind of work together, and so I know about them. I stay up to date on that. So when I saw that, I looked over to my guy and said, we're effed. I said, we're done. I just knew at that point. I walked out of the school because it had a bad signal in the cell area inside the school. And I called my boss, and I told him, I was like, dude, we got a problem. At the moment I stepped out to call him, my other road tech called me at the minute, like that minute. And he was at another school across the parish, like on the whole other side of the parish. And he said, do you know? I was like, and I didn't even say nothing. I was like, Ryuk? He said, yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and that was it. I said, all right, we got to regroup. Everybody just go back to the office. And we all kind of went back and regrouped. So at that point, once we knew, my other guy that's the sysadmin also called me and said, we got a problem. It all happened at the same time. It was 8:30 in the morning. So we had three incidents that we knew of just right then. And so when we got back, we talked for a few minutes, and we said, man, we gotta take drastic measures. We completely, at that point, 30 minutes since we noticed, we unplugged everything, sent a message out to all principals to unplug everything, turn it off. So it wasn't even 30 minutes after we noticed it that we took down the whole network. And at that point, it looks like every one of our school servers was hit, every single one of them.
Wow.
When you guys made a decision to pull the plugs on everything, was that like a procedure that was already in place, or was that just you guys doing a powwow meeting and making a call? Did you have something written down that told you to do that?
Well, we had like a small DRP plan, disaster recovery plan. It was very basic. They didn't really have a big one, but that was part of it. And that came from the state mandate. They said, have a plan in place.
Okay.
And you got to think, by the time they had that, they had already, the state task force had already dealt with it once or twice. And believe it or not, the Office of Technology Services themselves in October got hit. So the people that are fixing it here, the government agency got hit. So they kind of knew what was going on. So that was kind of from them. They said, if you see any kind of weird stuff, if y'all know something's going on, immediately kill the network. And it's more the network than the power. Kill the network, kill the power. Because what we've learned after all this, which I never posted this part because nobody asked me this, one of the things this variant of Ryuk does, if you have the network cable plugged in, it uses wake on LAN to wake up machines and spread.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
And so we actually observed computers that we shut off completely that just turned themselves back on, like with no power options in the BIOS. It just did it, and it would. So, I don't know how long it sat before it spread, before we noticed it. The only thing I can think of is that we left for 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And we started. I really don't know, but it was sophisticated. To me, I think it hit all those Windows 7 machines and then spread through admin shares. The other thing that raised a red flag once I started looking back on everything was about August, about when all that stuff happened in Lafayette, which I spoke of earlier.
Yeah.
We started getting emails that were obviously phishing emails. And we're on Exchange, by the way. Let me back up. We had hosted Exchange in-house. Okay. So we got our sysadmin doesn't really know much Exchange. He didn't, but we had a third party kind of involved with that. So we started getting emails in August, and they would have, like, they would literally have, I can't remember exactly how the email was formatted, but it had the user it sent it to. So imagine like you getting an email yourself, and your own plain text password was in it, in plain text.
Oh, weird.
And so what would you do in that situation if you saw your text and your password in an email that came to you that you knew was spam, was obvious spam? What would you do?
Change your password.
Change your password, exactly. So I'm thinking now, in retrospect, what was going on is that I think that was one of the variants of TrickBot or whatever. It was mining credentials of that.
Yeah.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
it was already on your machines. Yeah, it was already on your machines listening.
It was dormant. It was sitting there, and it was sitting there, and it was mining passwords. And so I think when the actual attack happened, I think it probably had hundreds of passwords. It used all of them to hit admin shares, and any share in anywhere on the network was knocked out completely.
What antivirus were you guys using at the time?
Okay, so we were on Windows Defender and Endpoint Protection, all Microsoft.
Yeah.
Managed by System Center. So like I could go into System Center, and I did this every morning. Like part of my morning routine was, and remember I'm a road tech, so it's just even funnier. But part of my morning routine was I looked at. I don't know how familiar you are with System Center, but you can go in and see any malware detected on the network.
Yeah.
And the timing and the name of the machine, and even down to the file level, what it was. And I would check that every morning, And it's crazy that we always had stuff like, random what they call pups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Stuff potential unwanted. But
coupon
nothing this year was exactly.
Coupon printer, yeah.
But nothing stood out. Like nothing stood out this whole year. I would look at it every morning. I was like, okay, there's one there. Nothing, it wasn't there. And another thing we started noticing around this, same time with the password thing going around, was that Defender was getting disabled. It was getting disabled completely. And the only way we could actually get it back up was a registry key. And so at that point, we kind of all knew something was going on, but we couldn't put our finger on it. And with the amount of this is where management comes into play, and it kills you. We had like 6,000 or 7,000 Windows PCs, and we had tons of different Windows versions. I mean, if you talk about Windows 10, like anything from 1803, even 1709, all the way up to 1903. When we had no 1909s, which is the newest. None of that was out there yet, because I've always taken the approach of I'm not going to put the newest Windows on. I'm going to stay a version behind.
A revision behind, yeah.
Yeah, and then every 6 months when they go to the next one, I'll push out the other one before that.
Sure.
But that looked like that killed us because we had so many different versions. The only thing that catches this variant of Ryuk is the fully updated Defender with 1909. Apparently, we were told that too. So
Andrew, this is Corey. I have a question.
Sure.
So when the day of and you disconnected everything, what did the district do as far as communication, like to the public and parents? Because I assume like the phones were down at that point. Yeah. So how did you communicate with everybody to let them know?
Yeah, sure. So you mean like the public or our staff?
I guess everybody.
Everybody. Yeah. So when it happened, we we have text groups. Superintendent has text groups to all the principals. So superintendent can quickly send a text message to all principals, and they all get it immediately. So that's how he initially said everything. He pushed that out, unplug everything through a text message, and then everything basically went out through phones. I mean, old school phones. They would when they had conferences, like the superintendent and had like a principal conference with everybody, he would write stuff down on a piece of paper and literally take a photo of it. Like he would write a plan down or something and then text the picture out to all the principals. I mean, that's how primitive we got. And then we had a Facebook page, so they kind of got some word out that way to the public. But everything like through the public at that point was through Facebook, and we didn't say much because we had news media there. So I mean, everything was being disseminated through the news to the public. But as for staff, we were just literally relegated back to the literal text message. I mean, even faxes we were doing. I mean, believe it or not, people are like, wait, why do you need a fax? Well, it was stuff like we went back to faxes. I mean, it was crazy because everything went down. You had to communicate, stuff, but it was all through phones, through cell phones, basically, and then old fax lines. Believe it or not.
So how quickly did you guys make the call to the state Cyber Security Commission or whatever they call it down there, and the National Guard Yeah, task force.
So they had these plans, like I said, in August when they sent out the white papers, and they made it. See, I wasn't a part of these meetings, but throughout August, September, October, they had like one meeting or two per week or even per month maybe, where all of the districts in Louisiana would get on a conference call. And my boss was involved. My sysadmin was in there with them. And so they made it very clear what to do if this stuff happened. You know what I'm saying? And then the whole thing that their whole slogan was, their whole motto this whole time before all this hit us was, it's basically not a matter of time of if it's going to happen, it's when.
Oh, absolutely.
It's going to happen to you. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So they said, look, when this happens, y'all call us, and then we got the system in place to start making steps to come out there and help y'all. So they made that very clear. So the minute, like when it hit, we regrouped, we shut everything down. We made the call before everything was unplugged.
That's cool. I mean, that's fantastic that the state of Louisiana has that. And like you said, they're the only ones in the country right now that have that. I think we need to start leveraging the state of Missouri to do this as well. So talk about your...
You have a perfect test case to show them. So.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to send this podcast to a couple people I know. Talk about your downtime. Like for the average teacher, you say your wife is a teacher in your district. What kind of downtime did she experience in her classroom or her building? No internet, no sys, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was bad. I mean, I have to think about actual days, but when this all went down, everything was shut down. So, I mean, we're on the January 15th, we were down, period. And I mean, that was all technology in classrooms. That was all system information. That was even like, your document camera because it's connected to your computer. I mean, everything was down. My wife's a math teacher. She lives off her document camera. She was freaking out. And I mean, if she was freaking out, I can't imagine. And, I know all these schools pretty well because I go into all these classrooms and people were just lost. They didn't know what to do. The downtime, we didn't even have an estimate to tell them, because we didn't know. And I'll tell you another thing through all this experience, what I've noticed more than anything is that the downtime, when you give a time frame, it always moved. Like you couldn't give time frames out because this whole thing was a moving, living organism to get it done and restored. Yeah. And we would be doing something major, and I can get into that later too. And then, something would change. All these people sitting together. You got the National Guard, you got the state technology department, you got us. Okay, we're going to do this now because we want to change. We changed our domain name. I mean, think about that. We changed our entire domain name in the middle of all this, and we did that in the middle of imaging. So we had to go back and hit those.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we joined the domain. We have like 10 schools that we go back to. So that's just one of the things. So what I learned was definitely when this stuff happens, don't give anybody any time frame because they're not going to be right. I mean, you give them a very, very vague estimate because it's not going to be a good time estimate. But as of downtime, probably let me think. It's the 15th to they were almost down a whole 2 weeks. I mean, almost. You could probably say 2 weeks before we started logging people into computers.
Which in reality, some of the stories that I've read from other districts in different states. I mean, there was one I think in Michigan or Pennsylvania where they were down a month and a half. No internet access to their rooms for a month and a half.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we to be honest, and I'm not patting myself on the back too much, but we got recognized in front of the school board last week, in front of the board meeting. And one of the things the superintendent, and my superintendent's very tech savvy. He came from a district outside of Baton Rouge, which is our capital city. He was a principal there, and he's all about technology. And the parish I work for, or the county, whatever, the parish, is a poor parish. We're a poor parish, and we're just starting to kind of come to the technology. The last 5 years, we've come up a lot. So one of the things he did immediately was he recognized what was going on. Like he knew. Yeah. And so he recognized that, some people on Reddit was like, who's getting the scapegoat? Like, who's getting fired over this? Well, they did the exact opposite. They actually recognized us. Well, and they gave me a certificate and like an award, basically, all of us.
Yeah, and that's in the middle of something like this, that's not the time to fire somebody. And kudos to your superintendent and your leadership for not having that kind of knee-jerk reaction, because the last thing you want is to go down manpower during an event like that. So yeah, that's not the time to make those types of decisions.
Andrew, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
how long before you called that task force? Were they either remotely accessing your network, or I guess they weren't because you were disconnected, or how quick were they on site, like to help you? And two, were they responsible for hiring the team that would try to figure out if like any data had been breached and leaked?
Okay, so yeah, the minute we called them that day, we had a meet. We had two representatives. We had two representatives from the Office of Technology Services the next morning. So we called them the next morning. We had two people there.
Wow.
We sat down in a room, in the boardroom, with all my staff and these two guys and our operations person. And so the big thing was start planning and do a planning period. All right, talk about stuff we're going to do. Like, what's the scope of this? So we sat down the next day. The staff part hiring, yeah, they already kind of had some teams in place. We have two National Guard units. So that first day, we just had two people from the Office of Technology Services come in. We looked at the thing as the overall scope. The next day, and actually maybe even that afternoon, we have one colonel from the Air Force. I won't say any names, but he showed up that afternoon, and he kind of spearheaded the whole thing. So we sat down. So the first morning, we had the OTS people, and their main issue was, and I've heard horror stories about this, the OTS people from the state had to get the authority from the superintendent and the school board. So we were told other parishes, when this happened, they did not want to relinquish all authority to the state to make decisions. And so every approval process, everything they changed had to go through like 6 people before it was actually yes or no.
Wow.
So what we thank God again to our superintendent, who knows, and he's also former military. He goes, I'm washing my hands of this. She gave the main state coordinator lady a complete authority and gave her basically acting superintendent power. So that was a huge move.
So not just over your network, but over the function of your school, period.
Everything. She was basically acting superintendent because he knew how serious it was and what we're going to have to do to get it back up. And he didn't want to slow it down by waiting for approval process. So he gave her that the first day. So to answer your second question about the staff, we didn't end up with the state police people at all. So they kind of have a severity system where they say, okay, like this is a severe number, 5 or something. And so we need this amount of people there. So what happened was the colonel came in from the Air Force, from National Guard. He kind of evaluated where he was. He asked me a whole bunch of questions about a golden image. What are y'all? He's basically, what are you guys' resources? What can y'all do? What can y'all get done for me? Can you get a gold image? Can you push this out? Can you push that out? So this was the colonel from the Air Force, and he evaluated everything from that standpoint. And then he made his calls to bring in the amount of people necessary that he thought he needed.
So this is going to be a weird question. How weird was it to walk into your department or your office, and I'm assuming the colonel and the other folks from the National Guard there, camouflage, weapons,
Uniform.
I mean, the whole shebang?
Yeah, it was eerie. Well, they didn't have weapons, but just to have a guy come in full Air Force outfit, full the whole deal, come in and then just, gets to sit down at a table, make some decisions, ask a couple questions, make a few phone calls, and then an hour later, 30 people show up in uniform. It was pretty surreal.
That's crazy. I could not imagine.
Yeah, it was something. I'm still kind of reeling from it because it was definitely an experience, being just doing this every day, and all of a sudden, but you kind of get taken over. You're having your department, my guys, my team, we're doing what we're supposed to do, and then all of a sudden it's like these people come in and they just take over. Has
your liver recovered? How much beer did you drink?
Man, I couldn't. Yeah, it's I'm making up for it now. I'll put it to you that way. I was working 12 to 15 hour days, about 15 to 20 days straight without coming home on the weekend or anything. And
so obviously,
I couldn't drink then, obviously, but after all this, I definitely did for sure.
So I'm assuming
if it was a bad day, I had a pretty big drink at the end of the day.
Sure, I'm assuming you guys went straight away into imaging everything under God's creation.
Yeah, they gave us two options. Iberville Parish is another parish here. They said, okay, here's, y'all got to make a decision now. Here's two options: scorched earth, which is obviously imaging everything, scorched earth, or you can do the Iberville shuffle, which is just find the ones that are infected and image those. I don't know why anybody would do that. I knew the minute this happened, we were going to have to image everything, so that wasn't even a question. So the first thing we did, once he asked me if I could get a gold image, like he was like, he didn't. This kind of like was very impressive me because I was, got to remember, I quote road tech, but I know way more than all this stuff. So when I told him I had a gold image ready and I could get it literally built and captured and within the hour, he like his eyes lit up. He was like, well, do y'all have a way to deploy it? And I was like, yeah, I can put out, WDS servers. We could do them temporary. So I had all these plans already ready to go. And he kept lighting up. He would ask me a question. I'd have the answer for him. He'd be like, oh, well, y'all don't need us then. Like he made that joke. Like, y'all know what to do. Y'all just go image everything and start from there. It was like a joke. But so first thing we did was we bought tons of flash drives because somebody had one of the people at the Office Technology Services. I'm not going to say anything ill will about them. Maybe that's for another podcast. But this is their 7th rodeo or 8th rodeo.
Yeah.
And they had a USB cloner, which is like a like a cloner, like a hard drive cloner, basically.
Yeah.
But for USB. And it cloned 30 of them at a time. And so the minute he realized I can get a gold image out, we scrambled and bought as many flash drives in the whole zip code or two as we could. We went to every store and we tried to buy them on Amazon and have them overnighted, but they wouldn't let us buy more than 10 at once. It was weird.
Yeah.
And so they scrambled, and that was basically a rat race to get as many flash drives. It had to be 16 gigs or more. And anyway, we cloned my gold image. Gold image was just a unattended script, fully unattended. You plug it in, you boot off the USB, it does everything else for you except join the domain. And then there was a script that I wrote, or somebody from the Air Force helped me write. We kind of wrote it together. National Guard. That was just a, hey, click me.batch file, and that joined our network. So once that was all in the USB, and it was on 2 different partitions, I don't want to get too deep in that, but we cloned the USBs, and we spent like a whole night cloning them and probably put out, hundreds of them. And they labeled them, they color coded them so they wouldn't get mixed up with stickers. They put them in envelopes. They wrote Team 1, Team 2, Team 3 on all these things. And then they planned on getting a team of National Guard in. On the weekends, we had National Guard like in numbers, like 60 or plus. They would come.
Wow.
In. Yeah. And then they just went out and imaged computers with USBs. That was the first big push.
That's amazing.
So
Go ahead,
can you talk about like preserving file? Let's say superintendent's computer is infected, you got to re-image it. Was there like a preservation of files at all, or how did that work?
So that's a good question. So yeah, people, almost every server was hit. The workstations were spotty. For some reason, we must have pulled it at the right time and shut the power off. So I think they were still being encrypted, but if we shut the power off, they can't do any damage and pull the network, right? So we had everybody shut them off, and we planned this very methodically to go around and get anything we could off that machine that was not Ryuk. So all Ryuk does, if y'all aren't familiar, it just uses Windows file encryption, which is a basic built-in Windows feature. It renames all your files to a .ryk extension. It encrypts them with Windows file encryption, level encryption, which is very basic, but it works. And you need a key to unlock it. So anything we saw that wasn't that encryption extension, we had a team going around doing that as well, just backing up stuff. So we turn on these owned computers, basically, or we thought they were owned, and we had them backed up on a flash drive. Of course, we went to like the superintendent first, the director of Title I, and we hit those like real early on. And then we actually filtered that down to the school level. We told everybody to write their username down, whatever their username was, put a post-it note on their computer, and if they wanted a backup, yes or no, like a check mark or an X. And so another team was going out and just doing that as well, backing everything up.
Did I read on your AMA that you guys were leveraging Google Backup and Sync as well for a lot of stuff?
Yeah, now that's a huge part of this. If you didn't read that, go, and I'll explain it now. There's no reason to go to Reddit now if you're just going to ask me this stuff. There's a lot of good stuff on Reddit. I answered everything I could. The biggest part of this, our savior, honestly, and it's ironic the way it happened, but Google saved our butts. I'll just put it to you that way. Like, our guy had a whim. I take no credit for this. That Google Education gives you unlimited storage. When you're at an education level. So we had home directories at each school. These home directories we preached over and over that the teachers save everything on their home directory because it's backed up through a Barracuda backup, an appliance. And so last year at some point, my sysadmin guy said, you know what? Google's free, unlimited space. I'm just going to put backup and sync on these file servers and just dump the whole data drive into it since it's completely unlimited.
Right.
And he did it. He went to every single server and did it. He put in a central office, every school. He put backup and sync. He made a server account, Google account, just named it the school server, exactly the server name of the computer. Dumped the whole D drive partition in there, let it roll. And let me tell you, those drives were all hit and encrypted. Every single one of them was encrypted on the file level. None of it got to Google. Not one encryption ended up on Google. So we were saved from Google, like completely.
Wow.
It saved everything. I mean, if we wouldn't have done that one step, and this guy did it on a whim, I'm telling you, like he just did it on a complete whim, which was probably the best and most important move that we've done, because it was just like, Google's there, you're leveraging it for unlimited storage space. Why not do it? Why not?
Yeah.
What's the point? Just do it. And if it doesn't work, oh well. But if you save anything, you're coming out ahead.
Right.
So like for instance, and I'll even go further. So our director of I'm just going to say one of our main guys at the central office that does, he's one of the main persons you don't want to lose data for, through all the shuffling and USBs, because you got to think we had like hundreds of USBs floating around. It got out of control. There was a point where I was coming home at night after all this, and I would just dump my pockets out, and I had over like 15 to 20 USBs in my pocket. And that's the true story, like no BS. So believe it or not, one of our main directors got lost. His data that we backed up, which he needed, got lost in the shuffle.
Oh man.
We never even found it. Like we still to this day don't know what happened to it. And I know it was backed up. It's probably floating on a flash drive out of the hundreds we have somewhere. But and just for instance, he had his stuff backed up. Well, luckily we also, which I didn't say this, but we also went around to the central office where our main people are. And we also put backup and sync on their desktops. That was another thing we did in the summer, just to have it, because you have the unlimited space. So that also, like guy who lost his backup from his USB, he didn't lose any files whatsoever. It was all backed up through Google. So Google.
I know what I'm pushing out tomorrow.
I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, if you have unlimited storage, it's not costing you anything. I mean, do it. I mean, it's a precaution, and I'm telling you, it saved us. And, it's funny that Google's going to end up being a savior a lot of ways because we're going to G Suite too instead of Exchange. So
are you?
Yeah.
So
I mean, go ahead.
Let's talk about after the fact, kind of post-mortem. You have a fresh, clean network now. Brand new imaged machines, servers, whatnot. What are you doing now differently than you did before? Our admin rights gone. Laps installed. I think we talked about it. So
everything's different. So everything is different completely. I'll just put it to you that way. Like we're still in the rebuild stage. Like don't get me wrong, this is not over. We have people logging into computers now though. Teachers are using technology, all that's back. But this rebuild quote stage probably won't be done, and even if so, till next school year.
Wow.
And so everything has changed. Like you gotta understand, like like I said, we're a poor district. The technology is just starting to get to where it should be.
Yeah.
Everything was built around Novell. Was it not NetWare, but the other one, or GroupWise or something?
GroupWise, yeah.
Yeah. So everything was kind of built. Yeah, everything was kind of built there like years ago. Like the whole network structure. You build a network around what you're using, right?
Yeah.
So all that was, was well before my time I got here, but I'm aware of NetWare and GroupWise and all. I know what it is. I've used Novell in the past when I was in school and stuff. So basically what we're doing is we're modernizing stuff because we have fiber run to every school. We have a 1 gig uplink right now. That's being upgraded next year to a 2 gig, trying to get to 10 gig, blah, blah, blah. So when we added fiber a couple of years ago, 5 years, I'll say, when we finally put the fiber in the schools and had fiber between everything, your structure of your network is still that basic Novell.
Sure.
I mean, you're a hub and spoke. We're hub and spoke on network. It's like everything is built from back then.
Yeah.
So when one of these events happens, it takes that and it takes advantage of of your setup and it nails you. And so, like when you ask me the question of what we're changing, I mean, down to the local admin rights, that's gone. Laps will be implemented in the next 2 weeks. I'm probably going to do it next week. I don't even have an admin account anymore. It's just an elevated account, whereas I don't log into it. So that wasn't a thing. I just had my login was an admin login before. And we even had a tech login that was a elevated tech login that all the techs use just to bypass all the UAC and everything.
Yep.
That's gone. And I was a domain admin account, so that's a no as well. So now all of our techs, we have our account that we use every day, and then we have an elevated version of it for when we need to do stuff. And I'm gonna tell you right now, like this I have to type my elevated account like 100 times a day now just to do everything. It's completely insane. Like I don't know. So that policy is being changed. All the admin right policies. I mean, we're changing our email. I think honestly, I'm gonna tell you another big thing I think is gonna help Exchange, and we had a Barracuda spam filter.
Yeah,
spam was getting through it, man. It was crazy. And I think this is where this thing originated from. It was one of those fake invoice emails. That's just my suspicion.
Sure. Yeah.
But going to Google, like we're doing, we've already switched, by the way. We're already on Gmail. Google's spam filter and Google's junk filter is better than anything in the world. And I mean, you're not going to see those emails that got through the other filters. They're not going to get through Google. I mean, I've had a Gmail account since it was in beta, right? My personal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking about almost 20 years. I mean, you could say 15 years I've had that account. I never, to this day, get any spam in my inbox. Nothing. I mean, every once in a while, one will slip through,
Right.
But then Google, it's crazy. Like, I see it come through on my phone or whatever, and by the time I check it, Google has already noticed it and deleted it.
Right.
It's crazy. And so that is going to be a huge deal too to prevent this.
As far as your end users and what they're experiencing, removal of local admin accounts or privileges on a teacher account can be painful or perceived to be painful.
Very much. That's the reason we didn't do it. Remember?
Okay. Has there been any pushback since you've done that?
Well, we're in a unique situation right now.
Well, sure, right.
Like that, everybody is going to just kind of listen to us.
Yeah,
and there's been pushback. Don't get me wrong. Like the main thing, and it's just funny, but people want their printers at their desk. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've okay, we're not doing that. I'm sorry. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But so I mean, there's going to be a lot of that. Now, you gotta understand, like. It's a good question too. Whoever asked that was like, because we wanted, like, you got on the white paper. Remember, we had like a 6-step program. That was the only thing we didn't do because of the pushback and the politicalness. And not only that, like our staff level and the size of it. I mean, think how many tickets are going to come through just because of UAC now.
Right.
And I mean, it's just, that's why he didn't put it in, and I don't blame him. He didn't do anything wrong. I mean, it was just one of those things where we didn't have the resources to do it, and we were just kind of praying and rolling the dice on that one. But the pushback is not there only because right now everybody's looking up to us. They're just, we can pretty much say anything right now, and people are going to go along with it.
Yeah, because you had a 2-week outage. Yeah,
exactly. They just want their stuff back.
Yeah.
Andrew, I have one final question.
Yeah, sure.
So did the task force, kind of weird question, did the task force do anything or have any idea that you may have not thought of? And I was like, oh, that was a really good idea. Or like, something to help through the process. Like, oh, I'm glad they thought of that.
No, that's a really good question, actually. The task force, and we could have probably a whole other podcast one day on just the task force, because I don't want to get into, I'm going to say this politically, they were great, but it's like this was their 8th one, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And it just did not go as smooth as you would have thought it would by the 8th time you've had to deal with it. And that's all I'll say about that. But did they have some good ideas? Yes, absolutely. And specifically, I mean, the one thing they want us to do is, they keep saying it, and I said it in Reddit a few times, I never elaborated on it, was tiering the network. And all that means when they say that is they don't want VLANs to talk to VLANs, subnets to talk to subnets, unless they absolutely have to. No longer a flat network. Basically, you don't want your superintendent's computer being able to communicate to a student lab machine, right? But
so ACLs.
ACL, absolutely, you got it. And so we didn't have, really, that was like something that just was overlooked completely. And so, I mean, that was, stuff like that. I mean, they had a good idea. Like, I put it to you this way too. The guy came in first, like I told you, the colonel, and he kind of pushed the imaging part with the USBs at first. And then 2 days later, I had 3 specialist guys from the National Guard. One was just a specialist in everything. He knew a system center. He knew a domain. He knew a little Cisco. And he had one guy that just literally was a VM guy, because we had VMware on our system. And then you had basically a SCCM/domain specialist. And then you had literally a VM guy. And then you had a guy that was a scripter that could write scripts. I mean, any script you wanted, like in 2 seconds. It was just amazing. I mean, sat there and watched him write code for 9 hours one day, and just was so blown away by what he did. But they didn't come in till the 3rd day. So that's when a lot of the, I'll just say, miscommunication or the planning wasn't where I thought it should be. Because, they came in, they wanted, it's almost like the National Guard initially wanted numbers. They wanted to just show that they could get this done quickly. And so we started pushing a lot of stuff and, imaging, a lot of stuff out fast. And then we would sit down and then have conversations, like I told you earlier, about, like, for instance, changing the domain name or something like that. Because we had purchased a domain name like last year, and we were going to do this anyway. And so we sat down, and then a decision was made then, and then everything kind of changed. So I'll tell you all this, a lot of stuff was like planned and then completely undone and changed like on a whim. It was pretty crazy. And I attribute that to a lot of people involved. And we had one person from the state of Louisiana, the main lady I told you, that got the superintendent acting power. But she was like talking to the colonel, which the military is a whole different type of person. And so you had a lot of egos clashing in the task force. It was a great thing. I'm not saying anything bad about it. I'll say this. There's no way we could have had the uptime we had without them. Like, there's just no way. Just the amount of manpower. And they've done it before, so they knew how to image and stuff like that. So it went pretty
And I'm sitting here thinking, if it happened to me or Corey or Chris, we don't have those resources in the state to come in 4 or 5 hours, even a day's notice, to have 60 extra pairs of hands on site to even assist with something like this. It completely blows my mind. And I know I get made fun of frequently for being nervous and fretting about things and worrying about things like crazy.
No, Josh has probably been
crying. You don't.
Probably been crying this whole episode. I thought I heard tears at one point.
I heard the Xanax.
I mean, this is my nightmare, man. I mean, this is absolutely frightening to me. Frightening.
What's your position? Like, what do you do?
I'm the IT director.
So you're the director. Okay, so I'll put it to you this way. My boss, who is the quote director, they call him supervisor, but it's the same position. I saw him age, like, literally in 2 weeks. Like,
yeah,
he aged. I watched it happen. I mean, there was like a day where I saw him get older, man.
Did you give him a hug at the end?
Oh, no hugs yet, but we got a good cry or two.
So, Andrew, we've gone way long, and this has been awesome just to pick your brain and hear your story. if you had to give 2 action items to any tech director, anybody listening to this podcast, what 2 actions can I take tomorrow that will not necessarily prevent this type of attack, but help resurrect the environment in this type of attack, or even somewhat slow it down? What 2 things would you say?
Well, first, I mean, obviously, look at your plan. Like, what plan do you have right now in place? Like, look up Ryuk, and after listening to what I said, what it did, and encrypted all your drives, what are you going to do? What do you have in place right now? That's what I would do first. Like, a DRP, disaster recovery plan. We had a small semblance of one. It was barely anything. We looked at it. Did we actually follow any of the steps? Nope. So pretty much my biggest thing would be, if you literally lost everything in 1 minute, I'm talking about network connectivity, and you had to rebuild it, basically a forklift from the ground up. I'm talking about rebuilding servers, domain controllers, everything. What is your plan in place now? And if you don't have one, start one. That's my first thing, because you're going to have to, if this thing happens and it's the worst case scenario, you're going to have to rebuild everything from the start. Temper expectations. Don't tell people that you're going to have this up. Like I kind of touched on that earlier. Do not give time frames out. Kind of don't tell everybody. You know, the school board's if you guys work for the school systems, y'all know it's very unique how they operate.
Yeah.
I wouldn't tell everybody everything. Only tell people what they need to know, because people start to spread rumors.
Sure.
People start to have the worst feeling and what's going to happen. Like, they're going to go to the very worst case scenario. So just tell people what you're doing to resolve it. Kind of give them slow updates, but don't give out all the information. Just kind of temper that from what you know how to handle that. If you have worked for a school system, you just kind of got to give out info as it's needed. That's my other one. But the other big thing is,
sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I'll say it easily. It's this one-word answer: Google. Go to Google. Back up on Google. Leverage Google. I mean, Google is God right now, y'all. I mean, you guys know, if y'all are IT people. I mean, I'm 36 years old. I've been doing this my whole life. Google has been God, or a thing, the all-knowing, all collecting data monster that it has been for a reason. But if it's there, leverage it.
What were you going to ask, Corey?
I was going to ask, did he ever wake up in the morning and almost decide not to go in that day?
That's a funny question, and I'll touch on it real quick. And to be honest, and y'all are going to laugh at this, it's not going to be the answer you expect. This is like, I was in my element this whole time. I love this. I don't get me wrong. I don't like the long hours and not seeing. I have 3 kids, and I'm not seeing my family it sucked. My wife was getting frustrated. All the personal stuff sucked, and long hours sucked. But just being in an event like this, where I was able to build everything, everything I've ever learned in IT, I got to put it to use and then get recognized for it, and it felt pretty good, because I know a lot of stuff and I've done a lot of stuff, and I've been a network admin and system admin for years. So just being able to step up and show my worth and then get rewarded for it and see, it's like when you cut the grass, you watch it, you cut your yard, and you see the immediate impact of it. Just seeing that, all the steps I did and having the role that I did in it, I enjoyed it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I didn't like the whole event, and it gave me headaches, and I was cursing at some point.
I think it sounds god awful.
Yeah, I do too. And Corey doesn't cut his own grass, so.
Yeah, well, people told me when I told them that they said something was wrong with me. So.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, we definitely appreciate your time tonight. You've been on with us for almost an hour now. Nice. We may circle back if we get some feedback on this with other questions. We may circle back and have you on again and talk a little bit more detail. And maybe a month from now we check back in with you and see how recovery's going.
I have no problem with that, man.
Greatly appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, I like to talk a lot. Obviously, I probably know that, but it's just so much to say. Like, even after we've been on an hour, we haven't even scratched the surface of the recovery process. It's crazy to think, because there's so much involved. Like, I would get home at night and try to talk to my wife about what I did the whole day, and I didn't even know where to start. It's like there's so much going on. Because y'all know, I'm gonna leave y'all with this. One thing I've learned, and some of my last comment, but this was just a blip at a school system in South, rural Louisiana, where we lost all technology. The main thing it did to me, and what really impacted me, what it impacted me, was it scared me to realize our society, how much we rely on this stuff, and just if something would happen where we would lose everything in our whole society, like this was just like a blip, like I said, we would eat each other alive, man. Nobody would laugh.
Well, thanks. I just got shivers. Thanks.
It's the truth, man. You just see these teachers like losing their minds over not having their camera and their smartboard. And I mean, imagine not having anything. I mean, it's crazy. That's what
Andrew. There's a legit chance after this is over, Josh remotes in and turns his firewall off tonight.
That's probably a good idea. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Block all outbound, right, Corey?
Right.
Yeah, and then start from scratch, man. Start putting stuff in when you need it.
See, yeah, right. We had this discussion. Well, Andrew, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Y'all have a good one, man. If y'all ever want to, like I said, like right now we're basically on phase 2. We've got everybody logged in, and I'll close with this conclusion. So we've got everybody logged in. Everything's image. We got teachers back online. Everybody's starting to get happy, and they're asking for other stuff. But we're only on phase 2. So if y'all want to circle around in a month or so, it'd probably be a lot further along the process. And we
might do that. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
All right, man. Y'all take care.
All right. See you, Andrew.
All right, y'all take care, Chris.